How do you think about sort of incentivizing people to become part of the conversation and
Yeah.
to win over stakeholders?
That's the hard part, and this is why great data teams see their role very much as a business role, and bring a bunch of business consulting and business analysis skills to their daily toolbox of methods and tricks and so on and so on. I like your framing that this is not simple and that the path of least resistance for most teams is, I'm afraid, to keep digging the hole and keep using the reports that they know are not very accurate, to keep downloading the data that they do trust, but is at too granular a level into Excel and just run their own pivots on top of it, which is something that almost every team out there does if they're not owning the data sets themselves. And so I think as a data team, it's important that you don't work in a separate reality, but if you are really aware of where that happens in your business, whether people trust the data that they're consuming, and whether you have a good idea of what they actually need to get to. And that, I don't think you can shortcut that. I think that awareness of how big the problem is and who's impacted by it, you need to start with that, regardless of what else you do. But maybe that is just a matter of going to actually to talk to the teams for an hour at a time, and maybe that doesn't cost you more than a few days in order to get through that. And particularly if you're starting, as say, ahead of data and a new team, or again, if you found this 2025 New Year's energy and want to do something new in your team, that's something you could start with, mapping out a problem. In terms of convincing the business then to put resources behind it, because that's at the end of the day what you're talking about, is the business aware enough of the cost right now to warrant the investment in solving data quality once and for all, and then data quality not just a reductive vision of just events, but data quality is in trustworthiness, good data model design, and so on and so on. I would argue that it pays off to think about the consequences of not doing it. So the cost of not fixing data quality. I think there's two factors there. One is making decisions based on wrong data, which is fairly obvious. You can't operate a business in the blind, but it's what's even worse than operating in the blind is operating with wrong data, right? So you don't want to crash the business into a mountain by having an overinflated idea of customer lifetime value because someone added VAT to it and they shouldn't have 5 years ago. That happens. I've got some scar tissue. But the other bit is probably also the opportunity cost. And even if you've got current workarounds in most teams to ensure that they got some amount of data quality confidence, mostly it is by taking the reins into their own hand, not trusting the data model, but downloading the raw data themselves from Stripe and just doing their own analysis. Then I'd say quantifying what the art of the possible, showing them what they could do with a proper centralized data set, showing that, hey, now you're just looking at raw Stripe data because that's the only data you trust. But actually, imagine you could join this with our customer segmentation from marketing. Imagine you could join this with your lifetime value models that we have in order to understand what type of customer is making these transactions. And that, again, requires you as a data team to be quite articulate about what you can do with the data sources and why that is important.